What kind of places push human ambition so far that even the engineers who design them are forced to wonder whether these structures should exist at all, or whether they are tempting fate itself? One danger rises in Barcelona, where Sagrada Familia remains unfinished after more than a century, its radical geometry locking stone and gravity into a fragile compromise. Every tower relies on experimental mathematics, where beauty and structural risk cannot be separated. Another kind of danger hides in the United States, inside the Morning Glory spillway, where calm water can suddenly collapse into a massive, spiraling void. Designed as a controlled disaster, it must work perfectly the moment nature becomes uncontrollable. Far above a Chinese canyon, danger takes a different form as the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge stretches across a void that defies human instinct. Built at extreme heights and punished by violent winds, it demanded solutions beyond proven limits. Together, these megastructures reveal how thin the margin is between human confidence and total failure. They are engineering marvels shaped by extreme challenges, where every success hides countless risks, calculations, and near misses. What happens when nature, time, and human error finally push back is a story still unfolding, and one that will challenge everything you think you know about building the impossible. Leaning Tower of Pisa. Rising from the soft soils of Italy, the Leaning Tower of Pisa stands as one of history's most unlikely scientific experiments, a monument where physics refused to follow the plan. Construction began in the late 12th century when builders laid a foundation barely 10 feet deep into unstable layers of clay, sand, and silt, unaware that the ground itself would determine the tower's future. As the structure climbed toward nearly 200 feet in height, one side sank faster than the other, and the tower began its slow, irreversible tilt that challenged every assumption about balance and weight. Before construction was halted, the lean had already exceeded 5 degrees, a dangerous angle for a stone structure weighing more than 30 million pounds, placing it on the brink of collapse. Rather than abandoning the project, medieval engineers adapted, subtly adjusting each successive level to compensate for the shifting ground, creating an unintentional lesson in structural physics centuries ahead of its time. By carefully removing soil and redistributing weight, they reduced the lean to about 4 degrees, stabilizing the tower without forcing it upright and preserving its historical identity. Today, what began as a construction mistake endures as a living classroom, where geology, gravity, and human ingenuity intersect to tell a story of adaptation rather than failure. Sagrada Familia. What kind of structure takes more than a century to build, survives war, lost blueprints, and changing technology, yet continues to grow rather than age? In Barcelona, this extraordinary basilica feels less like a finished building and more like a living organism, slowly rising through time instead of racing against it. Construction began in 1882, and more than a century later, the project remains active, shaped by generations of architects, engineers, craftsmen, and digital designers who never met its original creator. When Antoni Gaudi's original plans were destroyed during the Spanish Civil War, later teams were forced to reconstruct his vision from shattered plaster models and scattered notes, turning historical reconstruction into a scientific process. Today, the site operates as a rare hybrid construction zone, where stone cutters work alongside algorithms, and 19th century imagination merges with 21st century science through computer simulations and three-dimensional printing. High above the city, massive stone sections are fabricated with millimeter precision on the ground, then lifted hundreds of feet into the air and assembled piece by piece, where gravity, wind, and safety margins leave no room for error. Workers operate on narrow platforms suspended at extreme heights, following digital models that translate Gaudi's organic geometry into exact instructions for on-site assembly. Inside, light is mathematically choreographed to shift color throughout the day, calculated to guide emotion and movement rather than simply illuminate space. Gaudi designed the interior like a stone forest, where branching columns distribute weight the way living trees carry their mass, allowing gravity to flow rather than fight. When completed, the central tower will rise to approximately 564 feet, making it the tallest church in Europe, yet deliberately lower than the surrounding mountains as a gesture of humility toward nature. Few unfinished structures have ever become both a national symbol and a World Heritage Site. This basilica proves that some engineering marvels are not meant to be finished quickly, but to evolve across generations. The Dancing House. At first glance, the Dancing House in Prague appears frozen mid-motion, as if two buildings decided to lean into a dance along the riverbank and never stopped. Completed in 1996, this unconventional structure was designed by Frank Gehry and Vlado Milenik as a deliberate disruption of Prague's classical skyline, a city defined for centuries by symmetry and restraint. Rising from a site destroyed during World War II, the building transformed a scar of conflict into a symbol of cultural renewal, using architecture as a form of historical dialogue. Its design pairs a curved glass tower with a solid concrete form, earning the nickname Fred and Ginger, a reference to the famous Hollywood dancers whose movements inspired the illusion of motion. Standing roughly 121 feet tall, the structure uses distortion and asymmetry to challenge traditional ideas of balance, while advanced engineering ensures stability beneath its playful exterior. When it first opened, the building shocked the city, sparking fierce debate over whether modern architecture belonged among Prague's Gothic and Baroque landmarks. Over time, what once felt rebellious became familiar, showing that innovation and heritage can coexist. The dancing house demonstrates how science, history, and imagination can reshape a city's identity without erasing its past. Morning Glory Spillway, United States, hides in plain sight at Lake Berryessa in California, resembling a massive circular void rather than a conventional piece of dam infrastructure. Carved directly into the reservoir, this funnel-shaped spillway was engineered to remain dormant for years, activating only when nature pushes the system beyond safe limits. Its rim spans roughly 70 feet, and once engaged, water drops vertically for more than 200 feet, disappearing into a concrete throat beneath the lake. Most of the time, the structure is silent and nearly invisible, waiting patiently through dry seasons and normal rainfall. During extreme storms, gravity becomes the only moving part, drawing excess water downward without gates, motors, or human control. This design releases pressure from the main dam, lowering the risk of catastrophic failure during floods, capable of releasing millions of gallons in a single day. Unlike traditional spillways that channel water along open slopes, this rare funnel system functions like a vertical pipeline, turning uncontrolled flooding into managed flow. What looks surreal is actually one of the most quietly effective safety mechanisms ever built, where geography, physics, and engineering work in perfect alignment. Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge. It stretches across empty space like a pencil line drawn against gravity itself, inviting a deeper question about how far engineering can push into landscapes that seem designed to resist human presence. Suspended above a gorge carved nearly 2,000 feet deep, the bridge stands at a height that places it beyond every existing roadway on Earth and secures its status as the highest bridge ever built when measured from deck to canyon floor. This remote region is defined by sheer limestone walls, turbulent crosswinds, and sudden weather shifts, conditions that forced engineers to rethink how towers, cables, and anchor systems behave under constant lateral stress. Rather than simply spanning distance, the structure was designed to compress time, reducing journeys that once took hours of hazardous mountain travel into only minutes of direct passage. Construction unfolded in a near-vertical world, where pylons and cable systems were assembled hundreds of feet above the canyon floor, often with no ground access and no margin for error. Workers operated while suspended in harnesses, and massive components were delivered by specialized cable transport systems, as traditional cranes and roads were impossible in such terrain. Many segments were built outward from opposing canyon walls, a method that demanded millimeter-level precision, because even minor misalignment could amplify stress across spans exceeding 1,000 feet. The project began in January of 2022 and continued for nearly 3 years and 8 months, shaped by wind analysis, digital simulations, and repeated safety testing under extreme conditions. When the bridge opened to traffic in September of 2025, it redefined what was considered structurally achievable at extreme heights. With an estimated investment of $280 million, the bridge transforms a once isolating natural barrier into a permanent connection, demonstrating how modern engineering can conquer even the deepest voids carved by the planet itself. The interlace reimagines what high-density living can look like when architecture refuses to grow straight upward and instead spreads outward like a carefully balanced landscape. Completed in 2013, this residential complex abandons the conventional tower model in favor of a bold geometric experiment, stacking 31 elongated blocks horizontally to form an interlocking hexagonal pattern suspended above the ground. Rising to a maximum height of roughly 170 feet, the structure challenges the assumption that urban density must rely on vertical skyscrapers to succeed. Designed by architect Ola Sheeran, the project treats buildings less as isolated objects and more as parts of a shared ecosystem, where open courtyards, sky terraces, and shaded voids encourage airflow and human interaction. In a tropical climate defined by heat and humidity, The layout allows natural ventilation to pass freely through the complex, reducing heat buildup and lowering dependence on mechanical cooling systems. Early reactions questioned whether such an unconventional form could function as everyday housing. Yet the project quickly proved that radical design and livability are not opposing forces. Its success was formally recognized when it won the World Building of the Year award at the World Architecture Festival, signaling a shift in how cities might grow in the future. Millau Viaduct rises from the Tarn Valley like a ribbon of steel stretched across open sky, challenging the idea that size must come at the cost of elegance. Opened in 2004, the bridge was shaped by architect Norman Foster and engineer Michel Verlogeau as a response to one of Europe's most persistent traffic bottlenecks. At its highest point, the structure reaches approximately 1,125 feet, standing taller than the Eiffel Tower and briefly claiming the title of the tallest bridge on Earth. The viaduct extends for nearly 1.5 miles, carried by a series of slender piers that rise directly from the valley floor, giving the illusion that the roadway floats above the landscape. Despite its enormous scale, the entire bridge was completed in just 3 years, an unusually short timeline made possible by modular construction and extreme precision engineering. What began as an infrastructure solution has become a landmark of modern bridge science, where speed, beauty, and structural accuracy converge into a single, uninterrupted line across space. The Uamir Aqueduct looks less like a bridge and more like a quiet paradox, a place where roads disappear beneath water while boats glide calmly overhead. Completed in 2002, this unusual piece of infrastructure sits between the Dutch mainland and the reclaimed land of Flevoland, revealing how geography and engineering are inseparable in a country shaped by water. Instead of lifting ships above traffic or stopping cars for passing boats, engineers reverse the logic entirely, allowing vehicles to pass through a submerged roadway while vessels continue uninterrupted above. The aqueduct stretches roughly 125 feet in length and sinks to a depth of about 10 feet, just enough to safely accommodate small boats without creating heavy currents or navigation risks. By keeping the waterway shallow and controlled, designers minimize pressure on the structure while maintaining a constant flow of traffic on both levels. Construction demanded careful waterproofing and soil stabilization, as the roadbed had to remain dry and stable beneath a body of water that is constantly in motion. The project reflects a national engineering philosophy built on cooperation with nature rather than resistance. Here, water is not an obstacle to overcome, but a condition to design around, turning a simple crossing into a lesson in hydraulic science, spatial efficiency, and quiet ingenuity. Palm Jumeirah emerges from the Persian Gulf as a shape once reserved for maps and imagination, a man-made island designed not only to exist, but to be seen from space. Construction began in 2001 and reached its main completion phase by the mid-2000s, marking one of the most ambitious coastal engineering projects ever attempted. Shaped like a palm tree, the island is composed of a central trunk, 17 fronds, and a crescent-shaped breakwater that wraps around the entire structure like a protective arm. The scale is immense, with hundreds of millions of tons of sand and rock dredged from the seabed and carefully placed using satellite-guided positioning rather than concrete foundations. Beyond its striking geometry, the island dramatically extended Dubai's natural coastline, creating space for residential neighborhoods, luxury resorts, and infrastructure where open water once stood. What Palm Jumeirah ultimately represents is not just land reclaimed from the sea, but a fusion of marine science, geotechnical precision, and urban ambition, transforming shallow Gulf waters into one of the most recognizable human-made landscapes on the planet. Delta works. What does it take to protect an entire nation when the sea is always trying to return? After a catastrophic flood in 1953, engineers in the Netherlands faced a question that blended fear, science, and geography into one urgent challenge. Large areas of the country sit below sea level, where storm surges from the North Sea can push water inland with unstoppable force. The response became a vast network of dams, storm surge barriers, locks, and sea dikes stretching tens of miles across the southwestern delta. Rather than sealing the sea away completely, many barriers were designed to move, opening during calm conditions and closing only when storms threaten. This balance protects human life while allowing saltwater ecosystems, shipping routes, and tidal flows to survive. Some gates are massive enough to block waves higher than 10 feet, yet precise enough to respond to computer models predicting wind, pressure, and tide. Construction unfolded over more than 40 years, evolving alongside advances in material science, fluid dynamics, and climate research. Each structure became a living experiment, updated as sea levels rose and storms grew less predictable. The system now reduces flood risk by a factor of 1 in 10,000, turning probability into a form of national defense. More than concrete and steel, this is an ongoing dialogue between humans and water. It stands as proof that survival in a low-lying land depends not on fighting nature, but on understanding it deeply enough to build with it. Golden Gate Bridge stands where the Pacific breathes fog into San Francisco Bay, turning a narrow strait into one of the boldest engineering experiments of the 20th century. Opened in 1937, the suspension bridge rewrote what was thought possible, at a time when steel, wind, and earthquakes still intimidated engineers across the world. Stretching roughly 1 7/10 miles, its main span reaches about 4,200 feet, a length that once made it the longest suspension span on Earth. The towers rise nearly 746 feet, built to flex rather than fight powerful winds, thick fog, and seismic movement beneath the bay. Its iconic international orange color was chosen for visibility in heavy mist and for harmony with the surrounding water and hills, blending function with visual identity. During construction, a revolutionary safety net saved dozens of workers, quietly changing how large bridges would be built forever. More than a crossing, the bridge became a moving laboratory of physics, material science, and human ambition, proving that elegance and resilience can coexist in steel suspended over open water. CN Tower rises above Toronto like a concrete needle tuned to the invisible world of signals and weather. Completed in 1976, the tower was engineered as a solution to a growing broadcast problem in a rapidly expanding city. Standing about 1,815 feet, it held the title of the tallest freestanding structure on Earth for more than 30 years. Built primarily from reinforced concrete, its massive shaft was designed to resist wind sway, temperature shifts, and long-term structural fatigue. At this height, the tower is struck by lightning dozens of times each year, turning it into a real-world laboratory for atmospheric electricity. More than a skyline icon, the tower reflects how engineering, physics, and communication reshaped modern cities in the late 20th century. Nor's solar complex spreads across the edge of the Sahara like a field of engineered sunlight, turning heat into electricity on a continental scale. Brought online in phases beginning in 2016, the project was designed to harvest one of the planet's most reliable resources, desert sun. Hundreds of thousands of mirrors track daylight and concentrated onto thermal receivers, where temperatures climb high enough to drive turbines through pure physics rather than combustion. At full build-out, the complex delivers roughly 580 megawatts of power, enough to supply electricity for more than 1 million homes. What truly separates this facility from typical solar plants is its molten salt thermal storage, which traps heat for hours and allows power generation long after sunset. This capability transforms sunlight from an intermittent source into a predictable energy stream, reshaping how grids can function in arid regions. Rising from a landscape once defined only by heat and distance, the complex stands as a scientific response to climate limits, proving deserts can become engines of energy rather than barriers to development. Mahanakan rises from the heart of Bangkok like a tower caught mid-transformation, its surface carved into a dramatic pixelated spiral. Completed in 2016, the skyscraper reaches roughly 1,114 feet, redefining the city skyline with a form that appears digitally eroded rather than smoothly stacked. Instead of hiding structure behind glass, the building exposes terraces and voids, allowing light and air to cut deep into its mass. Its most daring feature sits at the top, a glass-floored sky deck suspended more than 1,000 feet above the streets, where visitors stand directly over the city's movement and scale. More than a landmark, the tower demonstrates how contemporary architecture can fracture traditional skyscraper geometry to create identity, risk, and spectacle in one of Southeast Asia's densest urban cores. Siduhe Bridge stretches across a deep mountain canyon where the terrain drops away almost vertically, turning road construction into an extreme engineering challenge. Opened in 2010, The suspension bridge was built to connect remote mountainous regions that were once separated by hours of dangerous travel. Measured from the deck down to the canyon floor, the structure reaches a height of 1,640 feet, placing it among the tallest bridges ever constructed at the time of completion. Its main span extends roughly 900 feet, allowing the roadway to cross unstable terrain without placing supports in the canyon below. The bridge marked an early milestone in large-scale bridge construction in extreme landscapes, demonstrating how modern engineering could overcome isolation imposed by geography. Confederation Bridge stretches across cold, restless water where the Gulf of St. Lawrence freezes, fractures, and moves like a living surface each winter. Opened in 1997, the bridge permanently linked Prince Edward Island to the mainland, ending centuries of seasonal isolation shaped by weather and ice. With a total length of 8 1/10 miles, it was once the longest bridge in the world built over ice-covered water, a scale that demanded an entirely new approach to marine engineering. Rather than fighting the ice, the structure was designed to work with it, using low, repeating spans and specially shaped piers that allow thick sea ice to strike, crack, and slide past without transferring destructive force. Confederation Bridge stands as a lesson in how infrastructure can adapt to extreme climates, proving that engineering succeeds not by overpowering nature, but by understanding its rules and building within them. Titleist Cliff Walk hangs between rock and sky where the Alps rise into thin air, turning a simple footpath into a test of both engineering and human nerve. Opened in 2012, the pedestrian suspension bridge was built near the summit of Mount Titlis, in an environment where weather can shift from clear skies to whiteout conditions within minutes. The structure stretches roughly 100 feet across a narrow mountain gap, suspended at an elevation exceeding 10,000 feet above sea level, where oxygen is scarce and wind pressure becomes a constant force. Designed to endure violent gusts, heavy ice buildup, and extreme temperature swings, the bridge relies on steel cables and anchor points drilled deep into solid alpine rock. Titlis Cliff Walk transforms a hostile, high-altitude environment into an accessible crossing, showing how precision engineering can safely place people inside some of the most extreme landscapes on Earth. Great Pyramid of Giza rises from the desert as a monument to ancient precision, built around 2560 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. Originally standing nearly 480 feet tall, it was the tallest structure on Earth for more than 3,800 years. The pyramid was constructed from over 2 million limestone blocks, assembled without modern machinery or steel tools. Its sides align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, revealing advanced mathematical and astronomical understanding. As the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid demonstrates that large-scale engineering and scientific thinking existed thousands of years before the modern age. Hangzhou Bay Bridge stretches across open water where tides, wind, and seismic forces collide, reshaping travel along China's eastern coast. Opened in 2008, the sea crossing permanently linked Jiaxing and Ningbo, cutting a long inland detour into a direct coastal route. With a total length of roughly 22 miles, it ranked among the longest ocean bridges on Earth at the time of completion. Engineers designed the structure to withstand typhoon-force winds, powerful waves, and earthquakes common to the bay's unstable geology. What appears as a simple line across the sea is in fact a carefully calculated system built to survive one of the most demanding marine environments in modern infrastructure. Langkawi Sky Bridge curves through open air at the summit of Gunung Mat Chincang, where elevation and exposure turn a simple walkway into an engineering statement. Opened in 2005, the pedestrian bridge spans roughly 410 feet, suspended at more than 2,160 feet above sea level. Its entire structure is supported by a single central steel pylon, allowing the deck to float outward in a gentle arc with minimal contact to the mountain. Engineers had to account for wind loads, shifting temperatures, and limited construction access at high altitude. Langkawi Sky Bridge shows how modern structural design can touch extreme landscapes lightly, creating access without overpowering the natural terrain. Royal Gorge Bridge stretches across a narrow chasm in Colorado, where the land drops away with almost no warning. Completed in 1929, the suspension bridge was built high above the Arkansas River at roughly 956 feet, making it the highest bridge in the world for decades. Despite its extreme setting, construction took only about 7 months, an astonishing pace for a structure assembled over empty space. Built primarily as a tourist attraction, the bridge proved that daring engineering could transform a natural obstacle into a destination. Today, it remains a striking example of how early 20th century builders pushed materials, time, and gravity to their limits. Great Wall of China. Across northern China, a scar of stone and earth winds over mountains, deserts, and grasslands, revealing how geography can shape history. Construction of the Great Wall began as early as the 7th century before the Common Era and continued for more than 2,000 years, evolving with each dynasty's fears and ambitions. When all walls, trenches, and natural barriers are counted together, the system stretches over 13,000 miles, longer than the distance from New York to Sydney. Its materials change with the land itself. Tamped earth in arid plains, stone in rocky highlands, and fired brick near imperial capitals. Millions of soldiers, farmers, and prisoners labored in extreme cold, heat, and altitude, turning logistics into a science of survival. Beyond defense, the wall regulated trade, migration, and communication, acting as both barrier and bridge between civilizations. Panama Canal. Carved through the narrow waist of the Americas, the Panama Canal rewrote the map of global movement and the science of engineering itself. Officially opened in 1914, the waterway runs roughly 50 miles, yet it erased a maritime detour of more than 8,000 miles around Cape Horn. Its true ingenuity lies inland, where ships are lifted by gravity and steel to about 85 feet above sea level, crossing a mountainous spine once thought impossible to tame. This system of locks transformed water into machinery, using freshwater lakes as giant batteries of potential energy. Construction unfolded in a hostile, tropical laboratory of heat, rain, landslides, and disease, where tens of thousands of workers died before modern sanitation and medicine turned the tide. Today, the canal channels nearly 6% of world trade, proving that geography can be negotiated, not obeyed, when science, persistence, and scale converge. Singapore Port. At the narrow hinge between two oceans, the Port of Singapore operates like a planetary valve, opening and closing the flows of global trade. Its story begins in 1819, when a modest colonial harbor took root along one of the world's busiest sea lanes, linking the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. Today, this port handles over 37 million containers each year, a volume so vast that ships rarely sleep, and cranes move with clockwork precision. Geography gave the port its advantage, but science keeps it alive. From predictive logistics algorithms to fully automated terminals built on reclaimed land. With limited natural space, engineers push the shoreline outward, turning seabed into infrastructure and data into motion. The next chapter rises offshore, where a single mega-terminal is designed to process up to 65 million containers annually, proving that in modern maritime history, efficiency can rival geography itself. Perched Bridge. Stretching across a restless strait where the Baltic meets the North Sea, the Öresund crossing rewrote how nations connect. Opened in 2000, this structure extends nearly 15 kilometers, yet it is neither only a bridge nor only a tunnel. It begins as a soaring sea bridge, touches down on an artificial island engineered from millions of tons of dredged rock, then quietly disappears beneath the water as a submerged tunnel. This rare hybrid design was driven by science and geography, because aircraft descending into Copenhagen Airport must pass safely overhead. Engineers faced fierce winds, shifting currents, and strict demands from both maritime and aviation authorities, pushing precision to new limits. Every day, tens of thousands of commuters cross this link, transforming two countries into a single economic region and proving that infrastructure can reshape geography itself. A landmark achievement of Öresund Bridge, Sweden.